Good evening, my chappets. In this video, I will show you a brand new game called Vampire Hunter. That's not too bad. That's the best take ever. Anywho, hello chaps. In this video, yes, I'm going to show you how to play the game Vampire Hunter, which is a brand new game up on Kickstarter. And at the top here, there's a little Kickstarter logo, and at any time during this video you wish to go check it out and help finance it maybe, or just ask some questions here and there, just click on it and you'll go directly to the link there. This game is a cooperative game from 1 to 4 players. You can play it on your own, okay? And it sees you as those groups of, you know, hunters, a bit like Frog. You know Frog from the Lost Boys. Yeah. Or maybe Sam. You remember Sam? No, wait a minute. You'd rather be Dean from Supernatural. But really, this game resembles Vampires by John Carpenter, where you find a nest and you have to clean it out as quick as possible. And you do it in the daytime because vampires sleep during the day and they're awake at night. So you've got to strategically storm the nest, stake out as many vampires as you can before the night kicks in, because the night will kick in, and that's when the mission becomes a little bit more dangerous, and you have to really work hard against some formidable opponents when they wake up. And hopefully yourself, you won't get turned into a zombie, no, a vampire, wrong game. You won't get turned into a vampire, because then you'll be working against the team. Sounds like fun. This game can be played as a single mission, or it can be played as several missions stretched out over a campaign. Let's go to the table and I will show you how the game plays. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose a scenario and lay out the board as the scenario states, reading out the flavoured text and all the mission objectives. Okay, let's go over to the table, and as you can see here, this is a prototype. Okay, so don't panic, Mr. Mannering. Salem's Lot was not built in a day. These components are not what you're going to be getting in the final game, because you want minis, you don't want cardboard standees, do you? No. Okay, so don't worry. The art may change, the quality of the art will definitely change, because there are problems trying to differentiate where the walls are and where the rooms are and the spaces are. But I'll go through this very quickly. I'll go into more detail about some of the bits and pieces later on in the game. You will have doors. Okay, and some of these will be open at the beginning of the game, which means that's where you come in, your heroes. Some of them will be closed, like that one there. Okay, so they can be opened and closed. When players enter rooms, there's these encounter tokens which get turned over, and they tell you where monsters, or if any events happen, or if there's any objects like a lever here. And again, it would depend on the number of players, how many monsters appear. There'll be some windows that you can smash open to let the sunlight come flooding into the room, and obviously vaporize any vampires there. There will be some stairwells as well, so you can go down the stairwell there, which will go into this corridor, and then you can come out another stairwell wherever you wish. There are these crates which can be used to hide behind if you're being attacked by a bunch of zombies. Saying it again, vampires, that's the game. So you can hide behind that, and that will kind of act as a shield. Is there anything else that I missed? No, not really. There are these little asterisks, okay, which will point out line of sight. Okay, so if you're here and there's monsters here, you can just draw a line, and if you can see that asterisk from the other one, you've got line of sight. Whereas, like for instance, this one here, he hasn't got line of sight because there's a wall in the way there. There's these numbers which would be used with the encounter tiles, and last but not least, there may be some rooms that you cannot search due to the fact that you're not allowed to search them. They have this little eye icon with a line going through it. So there we go, there's the setup. There's some hostages which you've got to rescue, and then you'll have this time track, which, and again, each scenario will have different times. So this one starts at 3 and ends at 10. So each round players will take all their activations, and then the clock will tick, and tick until night time, and then when night time arrives the vampires wake up and they become quite formidable. Each player will have a dashboard and they will choose whichever character that they wish to be and add their character card to the ID plaque there. These cards are going to be double-sided because you may get transformed into a vampire, and there's lots of little stats and a secret power on there. Each player also gets some armor which covers over their life points for the beginning of the game. They will also have their own individual basic weapons which have different stats depending on which player it is. You will also receive 2 items, again this may change depending on the scenario, which you add into your inventory slots. You have 4 inventory slots, and these are normally one-time use weapons. You will also get to choose a special ability which you put next to your board. Okay, and if you're playing like a campaign, in between missions and scenarios, you can actually go and buy more special abilities, and so you become more and more formidable. Other things you'll need to place next to the board are the daytime and nighttime activation cards for the vampires, item cards for whenever you search, terror event cards whenever an event happens, elder influence and compulsion cards for whenever the vampires try to control your hero. Also keep nearby all the other tokens that you're going to need for playing the game. And focus points, life point trackers, and of course your minis. Ready to play you are. Right, what you need to do is choose where you're going to start. Some scenarios may offer different doors that you can come into, like this one has this door here and this door here, so you may wish to have your party all together come through this door or come through the other door, or split your party up. It is totally up to you. Also, what's totally up to you is the order that you play in. You may wish to play in a different order each time, so you may want to start Stefan be player 1 for 1 round, followed by Magenta and Joshua, or Joshua, Stefan, Magenta. It is totally up to you. On a turn, players will have 3 actions that they can do. Here is the list of the actions. Once you've done your 3 actions, you draw an activation card and then go to the next player. Once all the players have had 1 turn, you advance the clock before the next turn. As the die goes by and it goes into night time, this turns around, and it's actually the vampires that activate first before you have your 3 actions, and the clock moves. If it ever reaches the end point, it's game over, and hopefully you've completed your mission before then, otherwise you've lost. If you decide to move, for 1 movement you have 2 movement points. So for 1 action I could move 1, 2 to there. To open a door costs 1 movement point. So again I could move 1 to there and then open this door for the 2nd movement point. Here we have an encounter token, and what will happen is when I enter this room, this encounter token will activate. It won't activate when the door opens, it'll activate when I actually step foot into the room. So if I move, spend my 3rd action to move, 1, this activates, I flip this over, and this tells me what monsters appear in this room. Then you would place your monsters, and I'll show you how to do that later on, and then your movement ends. Using tunnels works the same way. If I was to spend 1 action point to move, I could move 1, 2 movement points to there, and then if I wanted to again, I could spend another action to move and go 1, 2 movement points to there. Going back to encounter tokens, as I said, if you move into a room and there's an encounter token in that room, you reveal it and then you follow what it says on that token. In this case, it spawns monsters. Now if you're playing a 2-player game, you will only spawn monsters which have green in the bar. 3-player game will spawn any monsters with yellow in the bar, and a 4-player game will spawn monsters with red in the bar. So as you can see, a 2-player game will only have a warrior, where a 4-player game will have a warrior and 2 thralls. The numbers mark the zones on the map where they will spawn. So a warrior will spawn in 1, and in the daytime they will be asleep. And there'll be a thrall in 2 and a thrall in 4. Some of these encounter tokens will have different things on them, like this one has a lever which spawns in zone 3, which is a tool that you can use. It may open a door, it may force a trap to work, we don't know. Some of them may even tell you that there's a terror event, and a terror event is a card that you'll have to draw from a deck of terror event cards, and it will give you a bit of flavoured text, and it may have a test for you to do, or it may spawn some monsters near you. And you may find an encounter tile which says spawn token, which means that you'll draw randomly from a pile of spawn tokens and you'll place it in the room. This spawn token will activate at the beginning of the vampire's turn. Again, the spawn token is very much like an encounter token. You would turn it over and then place this ambush of monsters wherever they are. Whenever you add monsters to the board, you'll have to dig up their cards and place them next to the board so you can see what their stats are. Now these cards are double-sided. They have a daytime phase and a nighttime phase. So, as I said, if it's daytime, you'll place these cards face up on the day side. And as you can see, they're quite weak until the nighttime comes, and then you'll flip them over and you'll see that they get special powers. They get a little bit more tougher, and they will give you a headache if there's too many of them left at the end of the game. If vampires are sleeping, you can silently move through their room quietly without waking them. Now when vampires are awake, movement is a little bit harder, because if you want to run away from the pointy-teethed rabbit, it's going to cost you 2 movement points to deplace from a space where there are 1 or more vampires. So if I wanted to, I could spend 1 action to get 2 movement points to move into that room. Or if I wanted to, I could spend 1 action point to get 2 movement points to move here, 1 action point again to get 2 movement points here, and again I could spend another action to get 2 movement points, 1 to open the door and 1 to move there. Here Stefan has just walked into a room with some sleeping vampires. His basic weapons include a wooden stake and a crossbow, and what he's going to do is he's going to do an attack at close range with this thrall here, because his wooden stake has a distance of 0, which means that it has to be in the same space as him. He rolls 3 dice, and on a result of 4 or more, he will do damage to the thrall. Because the thrall is asleep, he can re-roll any amount of his dice to see if he can get a better hit. Luckily, the thrall has only 1 life point, so 1 damage would kill the thrall. But if you fail to kill the thrall, or any sleeping vampire, he wakes up and he screams, and any other creature in the same room as him would wake up. For example, that creature would not, because it's in a different room. So rewind, and let's say he does an attack and he kills that thrall that has 1 damage. He's going to do a second attack, which is to use his crossbow. Now the crossbow has a distance of 1 to 3 spaces away, so he could shoot 1, 2, 3. Well, he could if he had line of sight. Line of sight is with these little asterisk symbols. If you can draw a straight line without traversing a wall, you can shoot to that space. Unfortunately, there is a wall here, so he cannot shoot this warrior. He would have to move to attack with a wooden stake and then shoot at this giant bat here. Now, shooting from a distance works different if you're in a different room. If you're shooting from a distance, you can only shoot to the 1 space next to the other side of the door. So even though the crossbow has a difference of, it has a reach of 1 to 3 spaces, you can only shoot to this 1 space. You would not be able to shoot this space. No creatures block line of sight. No heroes block line of sight, so you can shoot precisely where you want to go, and you have to hit, of course. Again, some of the weapons have special powers which you may have to spend focus to activate. Now, you don't have to use just any of your basic weapons. You can use any of the items that you've collected or made along the way as well. So, Stefan, let's move him here so we can see a bit better. He's got a giant bat here, and we've got 2 warriors there. Here we can see that he does have line of sight to this space, but it's a bit close to get to that space there, so he won't have line of sight to this space here. With his explosive spear gun, which is a one-time use, as marked by the little red symbol at the top there, it's also a weapon which is going to produce sound, so if there are vampires in the same room, it will wake them up. And this weapon, also the third object down there, is it will smash open any barricades on windows. This is an explosive weapon, which means that the damage gets continually placed on to the other monsters in the same space. And the -3 focus points is what I'd pay in between missions if I wanted to buy this weapon. To attack, I roll 4 dice, and on a 3 or more, it would get a hit. So with 4 dice, 6, a 5, a 1 and a 6, I do 3 damage. 3 damage that I can use however I wish. So if I was to use it on the warrior only has 2 life points, I could wipe out the warrior, and then the 1 point would carry over onto the bat. The giant bat though has armor and then 1 point of life. So 1 damage would do nothing to him. Whereas if I attack the giant bat first, I do 1 point of damage, which would damage the armor, 1 point of damage which would kill the life point, and then 1 point of damage on the warrior, which means that the poor warrior takes damage which will carry over into the next round or the next attack. Some weapons, like the flamethrower, have a breakability factor to them, which means that after you've used it, you have to roll this dice, this special dice, to see if it breaks. If you roll blank, it doesn't break, but if you roll the symbol which says break, then that object goes in the bin. Damage on the hero works a little different. If the giant bat attacks Stefan and they rolled 1 success, okay, it would damage his armor. If the giant bat attacked again and got a double success, you discard the armor. And then any damage done to him afterwards would reflect on losing life points. Depending on the scenario, will depend on what happens when your hero reaches 0 life points. They may be moved into unconsciousness, which means they are just removed from the game, much like what happens when a monster is killed. If your hero becomes attacked and there's actually a crate in the room, you can just place your person on the crate, and then when the vampires attack, they attack the crate. You're hiding behind it, so that again they'd have to do 2 points of damage, 1 to get past the armor and then 1 to destroy the life points, and then any damage will be done to you. The same is the same for windows. If you attack a window, it has a shield of 1 and a life point of 1, but once you do it, any vampires in that same room with the window open will immediately be vanquished. Searching is pretty simple. If you're in a room with a vampire and they're sleeping, you can search the room. You draw an item card from the item card deck. If you're in a room and the vampires are awake, you cannot search the room. If you're in a room and it tells you that you're not allowed to search the room because it has the little eye with a line through it, you cannot search the room. If the room is in complete darkness because of the scenario, you cannot search the room either. When you search for items, you may find a trap like another guardian, or you might find a Bible, or you might find some junk. Now this junk is quite useful. You put it into your inventory and then you spend the focus points to turn that junk into an item. For one action, if you're in the same space as another character, another hero, you can trade as many items as you wish, so as long as they all fit into your inventory. Here are some more actions that you may wish to do. A vampire's den is never safe. It's always a disjointed, crumbling cave or a house which is falling apart. And sometimes debris will fall from the ceiling, doing some damage to you. For one action, you can crawl out from underneath the debris, or you can help another character out from debris for one action point. If you're in a space with a lever for one action point, you can flip the lever and maybe Frankenstein will wake up. But no, you'll get some focus points and you'll activate something. Again, for an action point, you can rescue some hostages. Simple case of turn the tile over and see what you get. Whee! The vampire activation phase will happen either before or after each hero moves and does their 3 actions. If it's the daytime, the activation phase will happen after you've moved, and if it's the nighttime, it happens before you move. The first thing you need to do on a vampire activation phase is if there are any spawn tokens on the board, you reveal them and add the monsters to the board. Afterwards, you take either a day card, if it's the daytime, or you take a night card, if it's the nighttime. And then you follow the instructions from top to bottom. The top, there may be a little bit of story, there may be some random encounters that appear, there may be a test, or there may be nothing if you're lucky enough. On this nighttime card it says that I have to test my faith, and if I pass, I will remove 1 wound token. For Joshua, he would have to roll 1 dice and get a 5 or more to be successful. Here's Magenta, she would roll 2. Then the vampires moved. The second box will dictate movement. Now, the green circle means a roamer, which is a vampire which is in a space without a hunter in, whereas a red circle is a vampire in a space with another hunter. These 2 vampires are roaming vampires. This one's a sleeping one, and this one is a fighting one because it's in the same room as another hunter. So in this case, a roaming and fighting vampire, which is only 1 space away, will move into your space. The third bar tells you that all vampires in your space will attack you. And lastly, only roaming vampires, which are 2 or more spaces away from you, will move 1 space towards the nearest hunter. After all the heroes have activated, and they've also activated vampires individually, that's when the clock will move forward an hour. When the clock moves from daytime to nighttime, every vampire wakes up. At nighttime, all sleeping vampires are made awake. All doors are opened, and any encounter tiles are revealed, and all the objects are placed out. The game will end in one of 3 ways. Either the heroes were successful and they did the mission before the time runs out, or the time runs out, which means the mission was a failure, or all the heroes got eaten by vampires. So, there you go, that's the game. It's a very rough overview that I've given you of the rules. There are a lot more rules involved. Like there is the campaign, obviously, where you can buy extra skills in between missions and maybe some extra items. There will be the solo mode, cooperative mode, campaign mode, lots of other modes. There's also some optional rules that I've left out as well. Like number 1, what happens when you turn into a vampire. That will be an optional part of the game. You'll have a new objective when you become a vampire, and you'll attack the other players and obviously try to stop them from winning. There's also these kind of co-op cards. What happens is if you're doing an attack and you're in the same space as another vampire hunter, you do like a kind of combo thing together like they do in like films and stuff, like a back-to-back thing, or that one flips another one and he does a and then does that in. Well, you get the picture, don't you? And these cost a little bit of focus points, but they do extra attack damage because you're working together with someone else. And then the other thing I didn't mention is the extra character. There's another character who's got a truck outside, and he waits outside with a harpoon. And what you do is you go up to him, you grab a harpoon from one of the entrances, you poke a vampire, and you go, well, you whistle, and he pulls the cable, which yanks the harpoon, which chucks the vampire outside into the burning sun, and watch him vaporize, just like in the films. There you go. There'll obviously be other bits and pieces. There'll obviously be real minis, lots of vampires, hunters, Europus, I can't even pronounce their name, and there'll be different elders as well. There'll be kind of like different masters. Where are they? And these will appear randomly as well. So each scenario, I can't find them. Why can't I find them? They're here somewhere. But there'll be different bosses, like that dude there, and they have different powers, and they come out at night time, and they'll be big, nasty monsters. Well, you can look at the pictures that I've put up on the screens for you anyway. So there you go. So, what do I think of this game? Wow. If you think from what you've heard that you want to back it, click on that Kickstarter logo up in the top now. Go and check it out. Go and back it. Look at how far they're doing. Look at how well they're doing. But for me, Vampire Hunter is a board game that everybody should